All right.
Steve's
Go
a
ahead.
musician, so he's now building himself a guitar.
Oh, cool.
So he borrowed a lathe. Well, it's a drill press for drilling a hole through precisely where you want.
I'm here today visiting with a friend of mine, Joe Parent. We're in Lexington, Virginia, just outside of town, on her beautiful farm called Sunflower Flats Farm.
But we have enclosed in our deer fence about 3 acres.
Okay.
So we've opened up another ½ acre out there. We grow year round.
Okay.
We slow down in the winter. We don't try to do everything. We do hardy crops in the winter. We use season extension of hoop houses and low tunnels and things like that. The greens, the root crops, the turnips, radishes, green onions, that kind of thing. And then we up our production in the early spring through the fall and serve 2 farmers markets through the season, various stores, several restaurants, and work with a couple of hubs, food hubs, here in Rockbridge County and in Albemarle County near Charlottesville. When I went to a workshop you did at the Horse Center here in the county and said I'd gone to workshops about microorganisms but had been very successful in trying to develop them in my practices. And so I said, well, I'm going to try this. And so have done various things with it for 2 years now, and I'm sold on it. I will always use it.
So you're using it as a foliar spray, or?
I use it as a foliar spray on plants and starts. I use it as a feeding the soil, feeding the baby plants, the little starts that we grow. And one of the things that we tried this year, pretty excited about, is making compost with it, because the compost just composts so much faster. We always save, we use organic practices, although we're not certified, and we always save all the plant residue and weeds and bedding, horse bedding, or whatever we can get, and compost it. And instead of it taking a year, and it's a lot of work to turn them, we sprayed it when we used just a watering can with the EM to water the compost piles. Made a 50-foot long, 4-foot high pile, covered it with plastic, left it alone, went and peeked about a month later, and it was almost all composted. We were delighted. So then we could, since we were doing rotations and planting throughout the season, we had this wonderful black gold to use when we needed it.
That's fantastic.
So there's other things I'd like to try with it. I've seen on the websites different recipes that I haven't had a chance to try, but we're pretty busy here, so I'll get to it.
Let's take a walk down to your compost.
We've got a big pile of pea vines here. We had on a fence. We go vertical a lot to save space. And then we just threw them in here with dead flowers and rotting squash and rotten potatoes and weeds and everything else. We just use everything. Anything organic goes into the pile. This is not a put-together pile. It's just a thrown-together pile at this point. What we'll do, because the EM is temperature sensitive, is early in the spring we will relayer it, putting the EM on it, and then we put the plastic. This one is from last year, and you see it's all deteriorated from being in the sun. We cover the pile about 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, 50 feet long, with a piece of plastic, and leave it alone. And we went back 4 weeks later and took a peek, and we were amazed. It kind of just settled. And there was great compost in there. There was a little bit of the sticky, the more fibrous plants left that we could rake off and then take our wheelbarrows of compost for whatever next crop was we were ready to plant.
Fantastic.
And incorporate it into the soil. And that's a whole lot easier than the other practices that I'd done before.
Turning it and...
Turning it and taking its temperature. I've got one of those 4-foot thermometers. You take it, stick it in there, and that's a lot of work. And I've got little kids, and that's hard to keep on top of everything. We did that twice this year, and we're just delighted. It was so efficient. The quality of the product was nice, and we knew that all those good, as I call them, good buggies were going to be going right back into the soil. So that's our story.
How did that differ from when you composted in the past?
We would only be happenstance of that we would turn it and use the thermometers and make sure that the temperatures were up using the organic methods. And so it took most of a year for the compost to make. So we didn't get as much. The product that we got was not as good. I don't understand the whole technology. I think that the plastic over it heated it up as well. But the microbes, because they were mixed all in the compost, I believe, did the work. Because we never turned it like we had done before. There's a lot of, tall corn stalks, you have a lot of organic matter. They don't break down, and if you want to compost that, a lot of people have gone to choppers, shredders, so that they can make it partially in a kind of a size that maybe will compost better. My husband has even been tempted to burn them just to get rid of them. What are you going to do with all this stuff? So we're so confident with the composting with the EM. He has made a separate pile of all his corn stalks that we will pile up and use the EM on and compost them. So that's a whole savings of effort of what to do with all that material, and a savings that we're going to get compost out of it. And it's an easy way of doing it.
That's a valuable commodity.
It's a very valuable, compost is a very valuable commodity. And we've got 3 more beds on the other side of the
Nice.
cabbages and turnips over there that we haven't gotten mulched yet. You can see we've laid down the drip tape that's underneath the mulch.
I see.
So if it gets too dry, we can water it with the irrigation.
Do you know that EM will clean out your drip tape, just so you know? In order to keep it free of organic matter, just let the EM stay in there, your regular dilution, like 1 to 100, and let it stay for a couple days, and then push it through. It'll clean out your drip line. We also have one of our clients used it for his well. He couldn't get pressure. You're on a well here?
Yeah.
He couldn't get pressure from his pump, so he put bleach down there and
Right.
still couldn't get it to go. So he changed the pump, and it still didn't go. So he was very frustrated. He threw about a gallon of activated EM down the well, and he had about 4 days of organic matter starting to come out, clean out the well. And then the pressure came up to normal, and he even saved his old pump.
All his pipes. Cleaned out the pipes.
Yeah, cleaned out the pipe. So
Well, you know
with
what?
your
I
drip line-
had heard other people that have used the EM that do greenhouses or grow their own starts. You can reuse the pots, but you have to disinfect them. So you're not spreading disease, you're not spreading bacteria or whatever. And on one of the websites I looked at, this guy had hundreds of pots and little 4-packs and whatever he used to clean. And he said he cleaned them with an EM solution.
Right,
Instead of using a bleach solution, which is highly toxic for him,
right,
and then, for the environment as well.
exactly.
And so I know about using it as a cleaner.
Are you finding that when you use EM, that you're not getting as much wilt, like they'll hold for the markets and then-
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because green onions especially can get kind of droopy. They're not right here, it's over another place. But these are nice and firm. And we like that. And at one point I thought that, well, how do you spray an onion? It's just going to run off, but it makes a difference. I don't know if it's that not only does it coat the plant, but it also then runs off and gets in the soil.
Absolutely. That's right.
And I've definitely seen great root growth when I use it on the plants. Both in starts, when I'm starting them to transplant, and then once they're in the ground as well. If you're going to use compost to make compost tea, you have, it's suggested that you actually test how much microbes you have. And that's why you turn it so you're not killing the microbes, and you test the temperature and have a variety of ingredients in there. And then you do a system of aerating the compost in water, like with a fish tank aerator in a 5-gallon bucket, say like this.
Right.
And that activates the compost tea, and then you use it.
Right.
Well, that's a lot to go through. And when I bought, my first gallon of EM, it was like $60 for a
Right.
gallon, which seemed kind of high, but you only use an ounce per gallon of water for your watering or
1 to
foliar
100.
spray. And that goes farther. And then I learned about activation. You
Right.
activate the EM where you take a three-quarters of a cup of EM and can make a whole nother gallon of what's
Right.
called activated EM. And then I can use 1 ounce of that with my watering. So I forget how many gallons you get out of 1 gallon of EM.
22.
I think 22 gallons, okay. That is
Makes-
just like the original, just like the mother EM.
Right.
And that's when the $60 gets real cost effective.
Exactly.
And it's actually a lot cheaper than the fish emulsion that I may want to add in my starts or foliar feed with, get a little nitrogen in there. And this is something that we can do for ourselves, which we do a lot of things for ourselves. So I find that it's very cost effective and that it's so versatile because you can use it in so many ways. Well, our total sales increased, almost doubled this year, and it's hard to sort out how much of it was being more organized, but I feel like the product was a much higher quality product because we used it across the board this year, and especially on our plants that we started ourselves. And even those that we bought in, we watered them in with the EM. So I felt like that gave them a really good start. We had a phenomenal eggplant crop. We grew 4 kinds of eggplants, and we couldn't believe, compared to the year before, it was just probably 3 times as much eggplant as the year before.
Wow.
So I know it has a lot to do with that. And I just wish I had a little more time to be more diligent in doing the weekly sprays and like that when I can, because every time I use it, I feel like it gives it a little shot in the arm, which when you work as hard as we do, it really helps.
That's great. I love it.
Chinese doctor who I studied with, I said, I am so sick, what should I do? Green bean, green bean. I said, green bean. And he goes, oh, mung beans. So I called up my friend, my Chinese friend, I said, I need mung beans, please bring them by. I know you have them. They always have them.